This is AgGrad Live.
We have all of the different segments within the cotton.
The show that explores what it's really like to work in the ag industry.
So making sure that we get policy and regulatory issues
straight from the people who live it every day. Hey everybody, we are glad to be back again with another AgGrad Live episode. It's been a few weeks with the Thanksgiving holiday and some travel and some moving. I have not been able to keep up a consistent once a week schedule. However, have a great guest here for you today, and we are going to pick back up very strong after the new year. In fact, if you haven't heard me talk about it yet, I don't know where you've been, but we are doing a program called AgGrad 30 Under 30, where we are selecting 30 individuals that are still in their 20s, so not yet 30 years old, that are doing great work in agriculture, either in agribusiness, production agriculture, entrepreneurship, research and technology, or education and advocacy. So encourage you to go to 30under30.ag and make sure you nominate someone there. But before you do, we have a great program for you here today. Pleased to bring on to the show Kristin Anderson, who is an Agri-Edge specialist with Syngenta. Kristin, welcome to the show.
Hi, Tim. It's so great to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, and you told me before the show that you've caught some episodes of AgGrad Live in the past.
I sure have. Yeah, I've watched, and it's been a really great way to learn about other sectors in agriculture that I may not work in or really didn't know as much about before having watched some of the episodes.
Yeah, and I think, your example is one just kind of reaffirming reason we do this, which is to give people glimpses into agriculture, because you never know who might end up, working full time in this industry. Take us back to when you were in college, what you thought you were going to do and sort of what led you to where you're at now.
So I grew up in Indiana, central Indiana, just outside of Indianapolis. And I ended up going to a school by the name of University of Tampa. It's in Tampa, Florida. I went thinking that I was going to become a marine biologist. That school has an outstanding marine biology program, and figured out it just was not for me. But I had a passion for agriculture from having been a 4-H'er, having shown cattle. I was pretty involved in the watermelon industry throughout my collegiate years. And so I had some great professors who, told me, I know that you're very passionate about the university and you don't want to leave and you don't want to transfer when you're so far into it, that, what about doing a communications field and just taking your passion of being an agriculturalist and conveying that into a communications project, whether it be in advertising or graphic design, journalism. And so I really sort of took that idea and ran with it. Got my degree in advertising and public relations from the University of Tampa. And I will tell you that when you're looking for a job in ag, a lot of times it's not so much what the degree is. They really look at just your experience, your passion, and those skills that you learn. Honestly, I use them every day anyway, just probably in a different manner, convey them a little bit differently. But it adds a nice spin onto what I'm doing out in the field.
And when you're graduating, you didn't have any full-time professional work experience yet. But what experiences do you think were most effective in getting you that first job, since you were making the leap from a communications marketing type background into maybe more kind of central agricultural type work?
Well, I will tell you, my first role with Syngenta was a program we have called a developmental sales rep. And that is essentially an interim program for folks that are jumping from a bachelor's or a master's degree into their first fully professional job. Essentially, you sign up to just learn for several months at a time. You're training, you're learning the Syngenta portfolio. You're assigned a territory with a mentor who's there to train you. And so when I was going through that process of interviewing with Syngenta, I think the question that continued to come up was just, how does that your past experience, how does it relay into what you're going to be doing? And so one job actually that I got a lot of questions about was I worked for Ann Taylor, which is a clothing company, when I was in college. And that was just a little side job I did to make money, but it was sales and it taught me a lot. And it was a lot of great experience, a lot of customer interaction. And I know that there's a lot of students out there who have a side job, whether it's working at a restaurant or working, in a clothing retailer or something that at the time you may think, oh, I'm just here to get some fast cash because I'm a poor college student. but you really truly can take any small experience like that and relay it into an agricultural field. Sales is sales, no matter where you go, and customer relationships and being able to make the best out of bad situations will get you very far in the interview process.
I love that. I think that's something that we haven't talked about on the show in the episodes we've done so far. It's such a good point, especially sales. Sales is such a crucial part of of any business. It is really what the whole business is founded on. And what happens a lot, especially with young professionals, like, I don't know, all the opportunities are in sales, and kind of ho-hum about it. But it can be a really rewarding work. And we haven't talked about that. But what we haven't talked about is you can get great sales experience while still in college. And so you can kind of avoid some of that whole, well, I don't have the experience to get the experience problem by getting a sales job, even if it's, not in agriculture. Well, take us to today. What does your life look like today? What are you doing now? And kind of take us through the day-to-day of what you do.
Sure. So I am an ag-reg specialist. I cover South and East Texas as a territory. So for a geo reference, that's basically Waco all the way south to the Rio Grande Valley. And what I do day to day is I meet with about 130 farmers and ranchers in the area. They're on a program that Syngenta offers called AgriEdge. And it is a combination of a program that allows our growers to have access to a farm record keeping technology, which I know is something that you wanted to talk a little bit more about, is the ag technology side of things. But it also allows them to utilize an array of Syngenta products from our portfolio, whether it be seed genetics or any of our crop protection products. Whenever I use the word crop protection, that basically means any of our pesticides that we sell. So a lot of folks haven't heard that word before. And then also anything from our seed care line. So I'm essentially a little bit of an agronomist, a little bit of a salesperson, and a little bit of a technology guru. So I like to say a jack of all trades and a master of none.
Well, when you first started, like your first day on the job, specialist is in your title, although it does sound like you kind of are a jack of all trades. How intimidating was it to kind of approach your first customers when you're still learning your job and kind of have to be sort of that expert on those products? And how did you handle that?
Oh, it's definitely intimidating. Anybody who's going to work with farmers or producers in their role, to go to them and recommend something to somebody who's been doing that job for their entire life, the job of being a farmer, it's so hard to tell them, what you think. And so I think the tool that I used the most was listening twice as much as I spoke, really asking questions to pull that detail out of them, to find out where the opportunity was on their farm, what their needs were. And customers will tell you, they will tell you what they're looking for, whether it's they want to better their yields or they want to make something in their operation easier or more efficient. Folks are willing to talk to you and work with you, especially if you're willing to provide them the service they need and help them. So, I think that's the biggest thing is that we learn in a lot of our trainings is folks will tell you what they need. You just have to listen and sometimes, let them do the talking.
No, that's a really good point. What about, do you have to kind of do any sort of prospecting or cold calling in what you do? And how do you handle that? I know some people are nervous or intimidated by that.
So in my role, I really don't do much cold calling at all. Most of our products are sold, all of our products are sold through the retail channel. So we really rely heavily on our national and our independent retailers that are all across the US to sell our products. And so those salesmen that work at those locations, we really rely on them to take us to customers, to the customers that are using our products, those that have questions about our products or who may want access to additional needs. And so we really work through and with the retail channel, and Syngenta is somebody that prides ourselves on doing that. And so when we go to a customer, it's kind of a group effort to provide that farmer or producer with the best possible service all season long.
Great. And what you mentioned earlier, and you're right, one thing I'm really intrigued by is sort of adoption of technology. I know I have been interested in agriculture for pretty much my whole life, but for a long, long time, I was super intimidated by technology to where I would just say, like, I don't get it. I don't, coding. I don't understand, for simple things like building a website or, more complex things like maybe sensors or precision ag type technology. Like all of it just seemed like a foreign language to me. knowing that you're not from a technical background, but you deal with some really technical stuff now, how was that learning process for you, and how did you become very comfortable with kind of using the language of technology?
Well, Tim, one thing we like to say in our business that in technology, your biggest competitor in the ag world is a notebook and a windshield, because that is very much still sometimes the preferred method of record keeping or data management on a farm. And so we heavily rely on each other. There's specialists that do my same role all across the United States. And so we rely very heavily on those that have more experience, maybe with specific integrations. We also have a support team located at Ag Connections there in Murray, Kentucky. And they're actually some of our software programmers. They provide us trainings and grower webinars. We recently acquired another company by the name of Farm Shots out of North Carolina. And so we had to learn a whole new piece of technology that deals with satellite imagery this last February. And that was a brand new ball game. So every time we step up to the plate and have a new piece of technology that we have to learn, we provide very in-depth trainings to all of our specialists. We rely heavily on our other coworkers to provide examples of what they're doing in the field. And honestly, we rely very heavily on our customers. There's a large group of progressive farmers that want that technology faster than we can probably pump it out. And the growers that we have in the field, they are some of our best proponents of learning. I always joke that I have some customers that know how to use our technology better than I do, right? Because they're in it and they're using practical application, or they're in their tractor using, their Green Star monitor every single day. And I'm not always. Sometimes I'm in meetings or doing other things for my role. And so I really rely heavily on those folks as well.
What about just kind of on a day-to-day basis, what's your favorite part of what it is you do? And maybe you can even point to a specific time that you say, you know what, in that moment, I felt like this is exactly what I'm supposed to be doing.
Well, I think, you've probably heard this in some of your other interviews. It's just the folks that are in the agricultural industry. They're just very salt of the earth people. The customers that we have, they really become like family. We're all working towards the common goal of trying to feed the earth and do it more sustainably, do it in the best way possible, and being good stewards of the land. And so I think for me, the moment when I realized, this is what I want to be doing, our technology, we use a platform called LandDB in the AgriEdge program, and it allows growers to actually track their profitability down to the acre level. So I had one of my very first customers I visited with, who I had been working with just tirelessly one crop season, and they grow about 10 different species of crops, which is extremely diverse, very hard to keep track of. And we were able to track their profitability based on all the species of crops that they grow down to the acre level, and just show them, just because you have the highest yielding field doesn't always mean it's the most profitable field. So to give them insights like that at the acre level, that's game changing when you're in the business of farming. And we are there to help the farmer be more profitable. And as I mentioned, to be the best stewards of the land. And if we can do that in such a way that produces the highest quality food, for the rest of the country and the world, I think at the end of the day, we've done something right.
Cool. Well, what about the flip side? What's the hardest part about what you do?
Well, I think the hardest part about any person that works in rural America is probably just the amount we have to travel. When you're working in rural America, no matter if it's in Texas or up in the Midwest, you're going to have long distances in between customers. And so just being able to be a self-starter and use your time wisely, whether it's making phone calls, or being able to get things, started and off the ground, that's really, really important to learn how to use your time efficiently. I think that's probably the hardest part of the job is, you're alone a lot. And so you have to be able to manage your time effectively.
Okay. And you graduated from college when?
In 2015.
Okay, so 2015, so 3 years ago. If someone else that you graduated college with, maybe they've been doing something else, they've gone to work in operations or in marketing communications, but they said, "Oh, I wish I would have done what you did, Kristin." What advice would you give them for maybe transitioning into this line of work? I mean, what's something somebody at that point can do?
I would tell folks, and I've actually thought about this a lot because I see a lot of folks getting their MBAs or going on to get their master's program as an alternative to really going after their dream job. And I would just tell them, don't be afraid to consider agriculture as a career opportunity. Just because you weren't raised on a farm or just because you don't have ag experience does not mean that there's not companies out there that don't want your experience and that don't want your rapport. And so I would just say, get out there, check out LinkedIn, check out career websites, just really do your research. I honestly don't know of an ag company out there that would turn somebody away just because they didn't have ag experience. Obviously, there's some specialized roles like being an agronomist, where you need to have that degree, but there's a lot of companies like Syngenta, who has our developmental sales rep program, where we teach you and provide you a lot of those resources that you need to be successful in the field.
Cool. I had a question come up from somebody else I was speaking to this week. I thought it was a really good question. They were early in their career, and they're like, what would be cool is just to be able to see what a career trajectory looks like. Yes, I know the current openings for entry level are maybe in sales or operations, but I want to be CEO. So how do I go from the opportunities that are here now to CEO? And what does that path look like, potentially for you, Kristin, if you wanted to move up in the company? Is there a clear path, and maybe what does that look like?
Sure. I would say that's one thing that I'm really proud to work for Syngenta, because we have a lot of career opportunities. Some of them are linear and some of them, are directly up and down. It just kind of depends what you want to do. So when we say developmental sales rep as an opportunity to get into the company, it doesn't mean that you're going to be working in sales for sure. So I'm a prime example of that. I work as an ag specialist. From here, I could do a job in communications if I wanted to. We have several folks that move into marketing lead type positions where they're working with specific products, brands, or crop mixes. We have folks that go on to become district managers where they lead the sales teams of specific states or regions. And then we have folks that, they really prefer more the R&D side or the scientific and application side of things. And so there's plenty of opportunity there. Syngenta is an extremely diverse company in that because we offer both seed genetics on the corn and soy side, the vegetable side, and even in the flowers business, there's tons of places to go. And then we also have, a huge crop protection portfolio. So we have people, I love talking to some of the folks that have been with our company 25 years or more, because when they list out all of the things that they've done and the opportunities they've had in the company, there's probably very few other places where you could have had that. Very well-rounded.
Very, very cool. What about, when did you find out that you'd be going to Texas? You aren't from Texas. You didn't go to school in Texas. When did you find out that Texas was going to be your new home, at least for a while?
So I was actually, as a developmental sales rep right out of college, I was moved to Central Michigan. So I was based there for 7 to 8 months, and that's where I trained. At the end of my training, we're given the opportunity to reapply for our permanent territories. And so the South and East Texas position was open. I've always had a fondness for Texas. And what really drew me there was I had an opportunity to meet the team that worked down here. So I knew the people were great. And then I also was particularly passionate about the crop mix. So I'm somebody that really enjoys horticulture and having a wide crop mix. In Texas, I get to work with rice, cotton, citrus, vegetables, corn, soy. I mean, you name it, we probably grow it. So the opportunity for me in choosing where I was going to be really based off the folks I was going to work with and who I was going to get to be able to learn from, the crop mix I was going to be in, because that was going to be a challenge. It still is a challenge. I'll be the first to admit that there's some crops I feel like I've grown my knowledge in, but there's others that I still have to lean pretty heavily on my colleagues. And then also just the location. I live south of Austin, so you can't really beat living there either.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Well, Kristin Anderson, an Agri-Edge specialist for Syngenta, thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate it. This has been insightful, and we were neighbors, and before I moved up to Idaho, we never even got a chance to meet. But anyway, maybe at some point here. Thank you for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Tim. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, and for those of you who are watching on Facebook, we would love kind of a thumbs up or a positive reaction to this, or leave somebody's name in the comments that might be interested in the type of work that Kristin does. If you're listening on the podcast, leave us a rating and review on iTunes. It definitely helps. So thank you all for tuning in. Make sure also you nominate someone for AgGrad 30 under 30 so we can recognize those stellar individuals. Kristin, thank you again.
Thanks, Tim.
Thank you for joining AgGrad Live. Visit aggrad.com, that's AGGRAD, to join the community, create your profile, and learn more about careers in the agriculture industry.